I have read a lot of business books over the years, and honestly, the most useful thing I've done for my business wasn't in any of them. It wasn't in a podcast or a course or something I paid for. It was as simple as this digital notebook. And it's the thing that you can grab when you're in the middle of something and you just need a place to put a thought before it disappears. And this is not a video about you need to buy this. It is about writing things in a notebook and how it changed about how I run my business. And it did so much more than what countless books did. Because here's the thing, and I think a lot of you are probably doing this too. Every business book I was reading was written by someone who built a business in a totally different context than mine. They had a different audience and a different offer. And I was kind of treating their conclusions like they were these universal laws, like they were the authority in the space and I had to apply it because it must apply to me. And the lesson that worked for some guy selling supplements back in 2018, I was just sort of assuming those were going to map cleanly into my brand studio in 2023, right? But gosh, when I say it out loud like that, it sounds a little absurd, don't you think? But that's what I was doing, and that's what I see a lot of people doing. And I'm not anti-book or anti-podcast or YouTube. I truly love books. I'll probably read more this year than I did last year, but there's a specific kind of insight that no book can ever give you. And once I figured out that, and how to actually start to capture that, things just started moving smoother. So let me back up and tell you what actually happened here. Last spring, I was in the stretch where I was doing a lot of client work, and my team was doing a lot of client work. We were doing a lot of brand design stuff with the Creative Cabana, as well as a lot of strategy and marketing from my consulting side. And I kept noticing the same kind of moments showing up across totally different projects with totally different clients. A client would push back on a price or something that we did, and the way I responded would either kill the deal or like unlock the project in this weird way. And what's interesting is it was almost never about the number. It was about something in the language or something in the timing or something that I just can't quite put a finger on. But I started writing those moments down. And it was simple, right? Like I've got notes from today in here. It can be simple, and simple is good because we need to take time to think. We need to take time to process. And I'm worried that we're stopping doing that. Like we're using AI to process for us, and we're losing the ability to really problem solve within our own business. But what I was writing down was stuff that was good. It was stuff that like this kind of felt weird. This went sideways, and here's what I feel like happened. It's almost like a journal, but instead of about your personal life, it's about the business. And after a few weeks of doing that, I started really noticing patterns. Patterns that were specific to my clients, my offer, my market, and the exact stage that I was at. They were patterns that nobody else had access to, and in a book they wouldn't understand, right? Like it's not their situation, and so the books weren't speaking to me. But honestly, every insight in this notebook ended up being more useful to my business than anything I had read in years. Because here's what no book can ever do for you. No book knows your client. No book knows the exact way you talk about your offer on a sales call. No book knows that you go quiet when the number comes up, or that your best clients always come from one specific referral source, or that the proposals you send on a Tuesday close twice the rate of the ones that you send on a Friday. Nobody has that data or that perspective other than you in your business. And the wild thing is, most of us aren't even looking at it. We're spending all our time and listening to podcasts, reading books, watching YouTube, consuming someone else's data. while the most valuable data in the world for our business is just kind of sitting here right in front of us, whether it's on a computer that's over here or a notebook here. It's like having a library card to your own business and never checking out a single book, honestly. So here's what I would suggest. And this is a practice I still do every week. Get a notebook. It can be anything. Doesn't have to be this, right? Yeah, it can be a notes app. It doesn't really matter. It just needs to be somewhere that you can capture things quickly and that is not going to distract you. It needs to be somewhere you can process. But every time something happens in your client work or in your business that feels interesting, whether a deal closes fast or a deal dies or a client says something that makes you reconsider how you're positioning your offer, write it down. Write it down the same day at the least, but write it down immediately if you can. And write down 2 or 3 sentences. You can take time to process more, but you can always do that later too. You don't need to make it pretty. You just can scribble it down. And then once a week on a Friday or maybe a Sunday, honestly, whatever works for you, just sit down with that notebook for 15 minutes at the least and look back at your entries from the week. Ask yourself, what's the pattern here? What does this tell me about how I'm actually selling? What does this tell me about who my real clients are? And what does this tell me about what's working in my messaging? That's really all you got to do. That's the whole practice. And I'm telling you, 15 minutes a week of that is going to outperform 50 hours of any kind of business content that you're consuming because the insights are yours. They're not borrowed, they're not theoretical. They came from your actual life, your actual clients, and your actual offer. It's your business. And honestly, I think there's something bigger going on with all the content we're consuming. The reality is, when you're constantly listening to someone else's playbook, you start to lose the thread of your own. You start solving problems you don't actually have and coming up with ideas that don't actually make sense. And you have answers that were built for someone else's business that was in a totally different season as you. Something that actually feels like yours, something that doesn't feel like a knockoff of whoever you happened to listen to last week, right? And it's by paying attention to your own work because your business is already trying to tell you things. Your clients are already showing you the pattern. The data is already here. You just have to write it down or look at the data. So you've been feeling stuck, or if you're feeling like you're consuming a lot of business content but not actually moving, try this. Try it for 30 days. Time flies. That's no time at all. Just get the notebook and 2 or 3 sentences a day. 15 minutes on the weekend or sometime, and I genuinely think that this is going to do more for you than the next book you're about to buy or the next podcast you're about to stick in your ear. And if this kind of grounded, honest take on running a service-based business is something you want more of, I'm making videos like this every week. So go ahead and subscribe. It really does help, and it motivates me to make more. So until then, just remember to enjoy the journey, my friend.